So, I have a little bit of a story time for you all. My name is Alyssia. I make holistic Christian lifestyle content, mind, body, soul, and everything in between. Let's get to this story time. So, as a disclaimer, you may have read the title of this video, but with credit to my mom and my dad, I never actually existed on the streets. Let's just be clear. I always had a roof over my head, always had food in my stomach, never worried about where my next meal was coming from. I did not live on the streets in that sense. However, my mentality from, let's say, high school till about college, post-college, until I started taking my faith seriously, I very much had a janky, ratchet mentality. I didn't respect myself as fully as I could have. No matter what anybody said, I always kind of did my own thing. And I still do that to this day, but in a more righteous way. I just had this lack of self-respect, self-care for how I presented to the world, how I thought about the world and myself. And I think that attracted a lot of people and situations in my life that left me very broken, very empty, and just devalued as a woman, as a human being. So I say all that to say I very much had a streets mentality, or not a very wholesome or womanly mentality. The reason I wanted to make this video is to encourage anyone out there who may feel like where they're at in life will never be wife material. You will never be good enough to have a spouse, take care of a home, take care of children in a wholesome way. This is for the people who want that wholesome life, but the way that you're living, the way that you're going about things is completely opposite. Maybe you don't have the skills just yet and you want to. This video is for you, to encourage you that it is possible. So let's back up. As I said, I didn't have the best mindset growing up, but eventually I gave my life to Jesus. If you've seen my Israelite video, you got a little bit of a taste of my testimony in that respect, and it's always been like this. There definitely came a moment where I started to take my faith a lot more seriously, and then I met my husband and we got married. I realized that I really didn't know anything about marriage and taking care of a home, being a homemaker, keeping a home clean, honestly, like to the standard of making everyone who lives here comfortable, not just myself, like thinking about someone else outside of myself. I didn't know anything about that. Again, no shade to my parents, it's just I was never in a mindset to want to even learn that stuff. I was very independent, very much I'm going to do my thing, I'm going to build a life for myself, and whoever I marry is just going to enter into that. So I very much had an independent kind of boss mentality where fitting another person into that was very difficult. I had to learn, because when we moved overseas, I had to learn how to, number one, cook. I didn't know anything about cooking. I've always lived with my parents. They cooked for me, had no interest in cooking. Still technically don't have the love and the passion and the desire to cook meals. Like, I love baking and I will bake anything, but to prepare, to chop vegetables, to make a meal, like for me, I'm not even a big eater. I love food, but it doesn't excite me the way like cookies and ice creams and cakes do. So never had an interest to want to learn how to cook, so I did it. But then you get married and you learn that it can't all be one person cooking. And for a while in our marriage, it really was all Tyler preparing meals, especially when we lived in the van. I think I mentioned this before. We had a propane stove, which required like a propane tank, and it just freaked me out. It required open flame, and I wasn't about that, so I never took the time to actually learn how to cook. When we moved overseas, there were a lot of meals that you could get here in the States like already prepared that you couldn't get over there. It got really hard trying to adjust my life. Unless we wanted to just eat the local food, I was gonna have to learn some way. So I learned how to cook. I looked up recipes. I found my favorite person that makes recipes, that shares recipes, that makes YouTube videos, and I just learned from them. Okay, when I say I learned how to cook, I learned how to follow a recipe, and from that it has taught me how to match certain things, pair certain things, and just kind of get the feel of being in the kitchen. Honestly, what really came from cooking from scratch and learning how to prepare full meals, not just Chef Boyardee out of the can or boxed mashed potatoes. It really increased my capacity to be able to prepare a meal, to be in the kitchen, even to find joy in serving my family in that way, which before it was definitely a chore. It was like doing the laundry or doing the dishes. It was like, ugh, cooking. Like, I wish I could just pop something in the microwave, but we couldn't. We didn't even own a microwave. I started to find almost this innate sense. Like, I love this. There's something in me that feels made for this, which was different because I did not come from the mentality of stay-at-home wife life. All of the women in my life were working hard workers. So for me to be at home, it definitely took some getting used to, but then to be able to find joy in it was profound. To touch on the cleaning aspect, I am not necessarily a strong believer in one person does 100% of everything. There definitely is a balance, especially when you add children into the mix. But I would say that I definitely found myself needing to clean a lot more than I would have if I was alone. I found that my standard of cleanliness is very different than my husband's standard of cleanliness. So we oftentimes would clash on that because where he had the energy for certain things, I didn't, especially postpartum. And so he took on a lot more roles when it came to cleaning. And it really made me realize maybe my patterns, maybe my habits of cleanliness aren't necessarily conducive for a whole house. It's never fun to have clutter and things everywhere. And I realized how much it was affecting not only my mental space, but like our family dynamic. It just wasn't thriving. It wasn't a healthy, wholesome place to exist in. And so I had to learn how to build in routines to keep my house clean. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, I watched a lot of people struggle through it as well. While I'm still not perfect at it, still working at it, not to mention having a child and being pregnant, it throws a little curveball in there, a few curveballs. But when you are committed to it and you want to learn, it really does come. And over time, just like with the cooking, I found my capacity to do it increase more and more, and the Lord showing me just the beauty in it. Like, you're not just being a slave to your family, you are actually serving them, and by serving them, you are serving the Lord. So for me, it became a really beautiful thing. It's still really hard. Hate cleaning, honestly. Hate cooking still, honestly, but the joy in serving my family and providing a clean space for them to thrive in, for them to think and exist in, brings me joy. To provide meals that they are nourished by provides me joy. And it really made me consider this world that we live in that builds up the boss woman so much. It really made me realize once I started cooking from scratch, I started realizing like the benefits that it has. My life started becoming a lot slower and more intentional and more thoughtful. And I really started to value that way of living. I started to look at how the boss woman, independent woman mentality, while I see some value in it, I see how it also has stolen from the family dynamic, in the sense of, let's just super practical. In order for me to cook from scratch, like, I have to start preparing things well in advance throughout the day. And if I was working a 9 to 5, I wouldn't necessarily have the same amount of time to do that. Therefore, buying something frozen or buying something already made, more processed, that's cheaper, that's quick and easy, would be the practical decision. And not to shame anyone that does that, because obviously we all have our different lives and circumstances, but when I started living just a slower, more intentional life, I started to see how the independent mentality kind of stole from this slower lifestyle. It's really made me think about God's design for women and where should we be investing most of our time. Like, if we truly are discipling our children and giving everything we can to our home as the Bible has called us to, then how can we at the same time devote so much time and energy to a 9 to 5? Now, again, God calls us all to very specific things, very specific areas, and there's many, many, many ways to do it. Don't get me wrong, but just coming from the perspective of the intentionality it takes and the time and capacity it takes to really raise kids and keep a tidy home and prepare meals that are wholesome and healthy for your children. The busyness of Western society just creates excuses for us to not be intentional about the food we consume and the way we spend our time. And not for nothing, when I started craving certain things and realizing that I couldn't get them, like oat milk and donuts and pizza dough, I started making those things from scratch, and they are so much better. When I tell you, they taste so much better, so much fresher, and they don't have that guilt associated with them because you know where all the ingredients came from. There's no preservatives, there's nothing added that's extra. You control the amount of sugar that goes into it. And I didn't want to give that up. And coming back to America, I realized how much I am more inclined to give that up just because the busyness of our schedules and our lives. If there is one thing that I want you to take from this video, it would be this: God increases your capacity. So it doesn't matter what endeavor you're doing in life, if He has called you to it, He will give you the capacity to do that thing. And you may not start off with the capacity, chances are you actually probably won't. But it is a chance for you to lean on Him and rely on Him to give you that capacity, to increase that capacity. Chances are you will never have that capacity, but through Him, He expands your ability. He is infinite. So when you are in Him, you literally have infinite capacity. When you continue to just rely on Him inch by inch, mile by mile, you will grow so much. And I found that to be true for myself, so I know it can be true for you. I do want you to hear me though. Marriage is not all about gender roles and being super rigid about who does what. Because I think when you get very rigid about things, especially when you're not on the same page, that creates friction and tension. I think one of the best things that I love about my husband is how super flexible and fluid he is with the seasons that we are in life. Like postpartum, you're not going to be doing all that you would be doing had you not just had a baby. Also, having a kid, like, you have to learn how to be flexible in your role. So try not to find so much of your identity in your role, because that can change, that will need to change at some point. Your identity is not caretaker, homemaker, all of those things. Your identity is found in Christ, and Christ dictates the seasons that you are in, and He does expect you to be flexible. And so I think we should expect that of ourselves and of our spouses as well. Don't get so frazzled when our roles and identity are shaken up. But I do challenge you to consider if the role that you are in life is maybe hindering the health of your life, the health of your future family or family that you're in right now. Are you truly living in the most abundance that the Lord has called you to? If not, why? I challenge you to consider why. Because this world has sought to destroy the family, the wholesome family, the healthy family, and we are not immune to that. So I challenge you to consider if you are living in that abundance, and if not, ask yourself why, and maybe make some changes to how you're doing things. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you found it helpful, insightful in some way. If so, you should subscribe. Stick around for the journey. There will be more like this. And I hope to see you in the next one.